The most dangerous predators do not wear masks in the dark. They share your DNA and sit across from you at the dinner table. For 3 months, the world has watched the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, waiting for a breakthrough that the official reports promise, but never deliver. But while the public narrative remains fixated on a mysterious abduction by an unknown stranger, the digital shadows point to a much darker, much colder reality. This was not a tragedy of chance. It was a domestic execution disguised as a misfortune. Behind the closed doors of the Guthrie estate, a chilling blueprint was drawn by the 3 people she trusted most: Cameron Guthrie, Annie Guthrie, and Tommaso Caian. How does a woman vanish from a high-security environment without a single alarm being triggered for 14 hours? Why did the Pima County Sheriff actively sabotage the investigation by locking the FBI out of the most critical digital evidence during the golden hour of survival? The answer isn't hidden in the shifting sands of the desert. It's hidden in the cold, hard data of the bank accounts. Nancy Guthrie wasn't just a victim of a crime. She was a victim of her own maternal devotion, targeted by the very people she once protected: music from the world. Today, we strip away the layers of this systematic betrayal to reveal the faces of the enemy within. The morning of February 1st begins with a clinical precision that defies the chaos that would follow. Nancy Guthrie is active on her devices early, her mobile phone pinging local cell towers in Tucson, Arizona. In a rhythm of absolute normalcy, she is a woman of habit, a person whose digital footprint provides a heartbeat of her music daily existence. Those who knew her describe a woman who never missed a morning routine. Yet, at exactly 6:14 a.m., her home security system logs the front music door opening. This is the last physical footprint she leaves before the inner circle initiates a total music digital blackout. While the rest of the world was sleeping, the countdown to her removal had already reached music 0. The silence that followed that door opening is the first major clue in a series of deliberate failures. Most abductions are loud, messy, and desperate. But the removal of Nancy Guthrie was silent, surgical, and terrifyingly efficient. There were no signs of a struggle, no broken glass, and no forced entry. This suggests a predator who didn't need to break in because they already held the key. As the sun began to rise over Tucson, the person who should have been making her morning coffee was instead being transported toward a horizon she would never return from. Look closely at the background of the 7:02 a.m. CCTV footage recovered from a neighbor's security perimeter. While the public focus remains on the empty driveway of the Guthrie residence, a vehicle known to be used exclusively by Cameron Guthrie slips through a back route that avoids every primary traffic camera in the sector. The environment was manipulated by someone who knew exactly where the blind spots were located. By 8:30 a.m., the digital presence of Nancy Guthrie is dead. Her phone is off, her social accounts are static, and her life is in limbo. Yet, the first call to authorities from Annie Guthrie is delayed by a staggering 14 hours. Why does a daughter wait half a day to report a missing mother, unless that delay was the most critical part of the plan during those 14 hours? While Nancy Guthrie was likely facing the ultimate terror, her children were not searching. They were synchronizing. They needed time to scrub digital footprints, time to move vehicles, and time to ensure that by the time the police arrived, the trail would be stone cold. In a missing persons case, every second is a heartbeat. And Annie Guthrie and Cameron Guthrie intentionally let 50,000 heartbeats pass in total silence. The silence maintained by Cameron Guthrie and Annie Guthrie during those first 14 hours wasn't caused by the paralysis of shock. It was a calculated buffer zone. Financial records recently unsealed through a grueling legal battle now exposed a brutal long-standing conflict over a $2.5 million trust fund that Nancy Guthrie had flatly refused to sign over to her children. She reportedly wanted them to earn their way. But for Cameron Guthrie, whose debts were mounting daily, his mother's principles were a death sentence for his lifestyle. When a mother becomes a financial obstacle, the sacred bond of blood is quickly replaced by the cold bond of greed. While the family staged their grief music for the local news cameras, Tommaso Caian was behind the scenes, busy managing the digital fallout and ensuring the financial tracks were covered. Tommaso Caian is not just a relative by marriage. He is the architect of the family's digital infrastructure. He knew exactly how to query her accounts without triggering music fraud alerts. And he knew exactly how to bypass the very security systems that were supposed to keep Nancy Guthrie safe. Every tear shed by Annie Guthrie on television was a distraction from the rapid movement of assets happening in the dark. The barren, unforgiving terrain of Pima, Music County provided the perfect graveyard for the truth. The distance between the Guthrie residence and the nearest unmonitored wasteland is exactly 12 music mi. a drive that takes 18 minutes under normal conditions. Yet the GPS signal for the vehicle driven by Cameron Guthrie went completely dark for exactly 145 minutes that morning. Why does the son of a missing woman vanish off the grid for over 2 hours at the exact moment her life is being silenced? Not one official report from the Puma County Sheriff has ever addressed this 145-minute gap. It is a hole in the timeline that swallows the entire official narrative. While search parties were being sent to the north, Cameron Guthrie's digital ghost was lingering in the south in a sector known for abandoned mine shafts and deep music desert ravines. The sheriff's refusal to investigate this GPS blackout is perhaps the most damning evidence of all. It suggests a level of incompetence or complicity that chills the bone. The money trail, however, has no dead music zones, banking logs retrieved through independent forensic inquiry. Record automated queries on the primary accounts of Nancy Guthrie originating from a secure IP address linked directly, music, to Tommaso Caian. These queries were not made in desperation. They were made with the cold confidence of someone who knew the owner of the account would never be checking them again. The most chilling revelation is a wire transfer of $450,000 into an offshore account precisely 12 music hours before the disappearance. Do innocent families move $500,000 in the dark right before a loved one vanishes? This domestic conspiracy found its ultimate shield not in the desert, but in the office of the Pima County Music Sheriff. As the crucial survival window closed, the sheriff took absolute control of the scene, creating a fortress of silence that kept the truth buried under layers of bureaucracy. When the FBI offered their elite technical team to recover deleted Google cache data that could have pinpointed Nancy Guthrie's final location, the Pima County Sheriff formally and repeatedly denied them entry. By rejecting the FBI, the sheriff gave Cameron Guthrie, Annie Guthrie, and Tommaso Caian a 96-hour head start to erase the music, physical, and digital evidence. The data suggests a discrepancy that cannot be ignored, states Kash Patel, a former Defense Department official. Music, but the decision to send DNA evidence to a standard backlogged lab in Florida instead of the elite high-speed FBI facility in Quantico was not an administrative error. It was a deliberate act of sabotage. The sheriff's fragile ego and need for jurisdictional dominance became the ultimate weapon for the guilty. He didn't just fail the investigation. He effectively managed the cover-up for the family by ensuring that the most capable investigators in the country music were kept at arm's length. Dr. A. Thorne, a clinical forensic psychologist with 22 years of experience, notes that the linguistic patterns, music, displayed by Cameron Guthrie and Annie Guthrie are textbook examples of guilty knowledge. In every media interview, they consistently refer to Nancy Guthrie in the past tense, using words like she was and music she loved, even when her official status was still missing. This linguistic slip is the sound of a mind that has already processed a death it claims music not to know about. There was no panic in their voices, only the cold clinical finalization of a financial takeover that had been years in the making. We must consider the emotional toll of this betrayal. Nancy Guthrie spent decades providing for these children, shielding them from hardship and building a legacy for them to inherit. To be targeted by the very people you nurtured is a horror that transcends the physical act of a crime. The files Cameron Guthrie handed over to Annie Guthrie and Tommaso Caian were not clues to help find their mother. They were the blueprints of a stolen inheritance. They were looking at her estate as a prize to be won rather than a life to be saved. Music, every thread in this convoluted case pulls back to the same locked doors and the same three names. Music, Cameron Guthrie provided the physical access and the logistics of the removal. Tommaso Caian moved the money and managed the digital footprints. Annie Guthrie managed the public, music, distraction, and the emotional shield. Together, they navigated the 96-hour window provided by the Puma County Sheriff, who ensured the FBI stayed blind long enough for the trail to turn to dust. While the searchers were looking for a body, the children were looking at a balance sheet. The pattern does not prove everything, but patterns of this magnitude do not lie. We are looking at a systematic removal of a human being for the sake of a $2.5 million payout protected by a system too proud to admit it was outmaneuvered. An offshore account linked to Tommaso, music, Caian received a second wire transfer of $150,000 just 3 days ago. The wealth of Nancy Guthrie is being drained in real time, while the investigation into her whereabouts remains at a complete standstill. Music, if you want the final update on the evidence they are still desperately trying to hide, subscribe and hit the bell icon. You have now seen the details the mainstream narrative is too afraid to music touch because the truth is more terrifying than the fiction. This story is no longer about a missing person. It is about a family that successfully executed a cold-blooded takeover, and a police force that music held the door open for them. After witnessing the timestamps, the offshore transfers, the music 145-minute GPS blackout, and the deliberate delays by the Puma County Sheriff, only one question remains for you to answer. Is this case being exposed, or is it being buried music by the very people sworn to protect the victim? Drop your answer in the comments below. I read every single one. The evidence is in your hands now. Mainstream narratives consistently miss these details, focusing on music, the scripted tears rather than the unscripted data. You have now seen what the inner circle never wanted you to see. The timeline never lied. The people reading it simply chose to look away. The door was open. The only question left is who made sure it would.